Justin Trudeau.
Bonjour tout le monde. Hello, everyone. Just this morning, I had a call with the other G7 leaders to discuss the pandemic. We all remain committed to doing whatever it takes to help people and our economies rebound after this crisis. We're working together to support international efforts to develop a vaccine, expand treatment, expand testing, and ensure that critical medical supplies get to the front lines. As I've said before, this is a global crisis, and it demands a global response. While we're doing everything to keep people safe in our respective countries, we also have to help more vulnerable nations fight this virus by providing more support for their healthcare systems, debt relief, and other forms of assistance. We will keep working together as partners to ensure the safety and health of people around the world. In the
last few weeks, our government has presented a series of measures to help people to get through tough times due to this pandemic. With the salary subsidy, we enable more people to get a salary even if the company for which they work had to slow down or even stop its activities. With the Canadian Emergency Response benefit, we give $2,000 per month to those who can't earn a salary due to the virus. And yesterday we've announced that we would have more flexibility to the eligibility criteria to get help when they need it. If you're a seasonal worker, if you earn less than $1,000 per month, or if you recently have used up all your EI benefits, the emergency response benefit will be there for you. At the same time, we're working with provinces and territories to bonify the salaries of essential workers in order to earn more than $2,500 per month. The auxiliary nurses, those who help take care of our elders, all those who are working hard to keep some kind of normalcy are doing an extraordinary job, even if the conditions are tougher and tougher. They should have our thankfulness, our recognition, and our support. Tonight, I will speak with my colleagues of the provinces and territories in our weekly phone call. And we will also talk about the ways that we can protect our elders better, those living in long-term care centers and elderly homes. Last night, the Minister of Public Safety, Bill Blair, got a request, an official request from the Quebec government to help the healthcare workers. We are working closely with Quebec City to finance the assistance plan, and we will have more news to share soon. But I can tell you that we will give you all the possible help by keeping the Canadian Red Cross, the Canadian Armed Forces, and those specialized as volunteers that have registered with Health Canada. We will always be there for Canadians in difficulty. Another issue that comes back often with the Prime Minister meetings, the Premier's meeting, is the giving all the equipment, the medical equipment. I've discussed with many Canadian corporations that will provide thousands of gloves to our healthcare workers. Later today, Minister Amman will make an update regarding all the developments in terms of
Over the past
procurement.
Few weeks, we've rolled out a series of measures to get people the help they need as quickly as possible. As things evolve, we're hearing from Canadians who need more help, from businesses who need more support. No one should feel as if they're alone in this fight. Our government is here to help you through these challenging times. So when we hear the program is not reaching as many people as it should, we make changes. A few weeks ago, we launched the Canada Emergency Business Account to help small businesses struggling with cash flow. Under this program, banks are offering $40,000 loans, which are guaranteed by the government. To date, more than 195,000 loans have been approved. We're talking about more than $7.5 billion in credit to small and medium-sized businesses. It's a start, but Minister Ng and others have heard from business owners who could really use this help, but who do not fit the current admissibility criteria. So we're going to make some adjustments, because we want to be there to support you. Today, we are expanding the Canada Emergency Business Account by both increasing and decreasing the eligibility threshold. Now, businesses who spend between $20,000, who spent between $20,000 and $1.5 million in total payroll in 2019 will be eligible to receive a loan through the CEBA. That's businesses who spent between $20,000 and $1.5 million in total payroll in 2019 will now be eligible. This is money entrepreneurs and employers can use to cover operational costs and help with other immediate needs. Businesses and commercial property owners are also facing specific challenges because of COVID-19, so we plan on introducing the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance. This program will provide support to help small businesses with their rent for the months of April, May, and June. To implement this program, we have to work with the provinces and territories as they govern rental relationships, and we hope to have more details to share very soon. Il y a plusieurs semaines, on a instauré le compte
Many weeks ago, we've started an emergency account for companies. It is a program that enables banks to offer guaranteed loans up to $40,000 to eligible companies to help them with their cash flow issues. Up to now, over 195,000 loans were approved. We're talking over $7.5 billion in credit for small and medium-sized companies. It is its start, but Minister Ng and others discuss with other employers who need this financial help but are not eligible to this program. So today, we are enlarging the scope of the loans by increasing and lowering the thresholds for eligibility. Now, companies with spend over $20,000 and $1.5 million in salary mass in 2019 can make a request to have a guaranteed loan. This is funding that entrepreneurs and employers can use to fill their cash flow issues and other immediate expenses issues. Furthermore, companies and commercial building owners are facing particular difficulties due to COVID-19. Our government has the intention of introducing the emergency help for commercial rent. It will enable small businesses with their rent for the months of April, May, and June. To put in place this program, we must collaborate with provinces and territories because they are in charge of managing everything that has to do with rents, and we will have details soon.
It's been snowing in some places this week, including here in Ottawa, because that's just what 2020 brings. But we hope that the weather will get nicer. As time goes on, staying home and not seeing friends is going to be even more difficult. We're going to miss our colleagues, our friends, our neighbors, and our parents even more than we do now. But we have to be disciplined. We must stay the course. We cannot let the progress we've made go to waste. And above all, we cannot put lives at risk. So let's keep following public health recommendations. Wash your hands. Stay home as much as possible. And if you do go out, be sure to stay at least 2 meters away from others. If we persist and persevere, I know that we will prevail. Once again, thank you all for joining us. I'm now happy to take questions.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now go to the phone lines for some questions. Just one question, one follow-up. Operator.
Thank you. Merci. The first question, la première question, l'inaudible, la presse canadienne. À vous.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. Au sujet de cette aide.
Mr. Trudeau, regarding this help that Quebec has finally asked, you say that there will be details later, but you will be looking at the Army of Volunteers and the Red Cross. Is there already a commitment to send the Canadian Red Cross and the Canadian Army? The province of Quebec has made 2 requests for help that we filled already quickly, so that Canadian Rangers could go and help in Nunavik and in the Basse-Côte-Nord or Lower Côte-Nord area. Yesterday, we got a 3rd request that we are currently looking at because it is a bit different than what we are often asking to the Canadian Armed Forces. So we are looking with them how we can help the province of Quebec through this tough time. I recognize how people are worried for their parents and for the elders in the long-term and residences for elderly. And we acknowledge that we need to find ways to help more. We will be there to help, but it'll take conversations with the province of Quebec to figure out how exactly we can help to meet this request that is not usual in a situation that is absolutely not usual. So what is unusual in that request? Is it for the CHSLD, the long-term care institutions? Well, it's for medical help. People who are trained as doctors, and our armed forces certainly have doctors, but they don't have that many of them. And we're looking at how we can help at that level. If discussions, those are the discussions we're having. And so when it's time to help with floodings, the armed forces are used to deploy and they're trained to help in that type of situation. This is a new situation. So we are currently speaking with the province of Quebec to figure out how we can help, but we will be there to help. We understand how it's important for everyone.
Merci. Prochaine question. Order.
Thank you. Merci. Prochaine question, Émilie Bergeron, Agence QMI. À vous.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. Pouvez-vous préciser aussi?
Mr. Trudeau, can you be more precise on this help that is asked by Quebec? Are we talking about targeted help for the CHSLD, the long-term help institutions? Well, it's a request we've got yesterday from Quebec, the province of Quebec, and we're working with them. We recognize there's a particular need for the CHSLD, for our elders' home and residences, and we're looking at how the federal government can help at that level, and we will continue to work with the province of Quebec to send this help. We understand how this is important, and we will be there to help.
D'accord. Et oui, ma question suivie, qu'est-ce qui va se passer lundi? Donc, la Chambre.
What will happen on Monday? The Commons it's been suspended up to April 20th. This is Monday. If there's no deal with the Conservatives, what could happen? And what is the scenario that you're worried about? There's nothing to worry about. Our democracy is healthy, and I know that our institutions must continue to work, not despite of the crisis, but due to the crisis. So we're in discussion with the opposition party to find a way to continue the important job that is done by our democratic institutions while making sure that we are following the recommendations and the advice given by our health experts. So we are about to conclude those discussions, and we will have more to announce on how the Parliament will work for the weeks coming.
Thank you. Next question, operator.
Thank you. Merci. Next question, Ryan Tumulty, National Post. Line open.
Yeah. Good morning, Prime Minister. I'm wondering, when you're meeting with the premiers today, are you going to discuss how to phase and reopen the economy? I'm wondering if you're at all concerned that the possibility that some provinces that are doing better may reopen before other provinces, creating a strain there.
I think one of the things we've seen across the country from leaders and from citizens is a desire to know when this is going to be over, how soon we're going to be able to start getting back to normal life. But I think everyone understands that until we have a vaccine, until we are in a place where there is proper treatment, there is a massive amount of testing, we are not going to be able to talk about getting back to normal. We will, hopefully, in the coming time, be able to loosen certain restrictions. But our health professionals and experts and all leaders understand that that has to be done at the right moment and very, very carefully. It would be absolutely disastrous for us to open up too early or too quickly and have another wave hit us that could be just as bad as this one, and find ourselves in a situation of having to go back into quarantine the way we are right now, and have everything that we've done these past weeks be for nothing. We know that there are lots of conversations to be had about how we reopen our economy, what happens in the right order, what the sequencing is, how we keep people safe. But we're a long way from having the ability to start doing that. Of course, conversations are ongoing now, but we're still many weeks away from talking about actually doing anything to reopen our economy, even with the variations across the country of the local state of the pandemic.
Follow-up, Brian?
Yeah, and then in terms of that discussion, do you envision that it will be based on metrics? Will it be based on the number of new cases, say, or some sort of metrics-based approach to making that decision, I guess?
I think looking at where we are on the curve, the number of new cases, the decline in cases will be an important piece of it. But I think what's even more important is the measures that we will have in place to be vigilant, to respond if and when there are resurgences of the virus in local pockets in particular areas. We're going to need to be extremely vigilant, extremely prepared to respond quickly with massive testing, with contact tracing, with measures that people will be able to kick in very quickly if that comes. I don't think we can talk about reopening things until we are confident that we have exactly the plan on responding to future resurgences in place. And that's a lot of what the conversations are going on right now.
Thank you. Next question, operator.
Thank you. Merci. Next question, David Engren, Reuters. Line open.
Yeah, good morning, Prime Minister. On your G7 call, what, if anything, did other leaders say to President Trump about his decision to suspend funding for the World Health Organization?
I think we all recognize on the call how important it is to continue to coordinate and collaborate the science around the pandemic, to work on public health measures around the world, to share information around vaccine development, around treatments that can work. There is a need for international coordination, and the WHO is an important part of that collaboration and coordination. We recognize that there have been questions asked, but at the same time, it is really important that we stay coordinated as we move through this. That's certainly what Canada is going to do.
And secondly, President Trump yesterday suggested that the border with Canada, the restrictions could be loosened. Are there any such plans from your point of view?
I think there was a recognition by the president, as I've highlighted many times, that the closeness, the collaboration, the friendship between Canada and the United States is quite unlike any other. And therefore, the work that we continue to do to keep our citizens safe while coordinating very carefully is unlike our approaches with other countries around the world. There's a recognition that as we move forward, there will be special thought given to this relationship. But at the same time, we know that there is a significant amount of time still before we can talk about loosening such restrictions. Okay. We
recognize that Canada and the United States have a friendship that is not like others across the world. We acknowledge that we can work together at levels that is more integrated in other countries, and that's what the President has underlined, and that's what I underline often. We will continue to collaborate and coordinate. But the reality is that it is still many weeks away before we can talk about releasing restrictions regarding our borders or social distancing.
Mr. Molly Thomas, CTV National News. You said there would be a significant amount of time, I guess, to having this border discussion. What is the danger to Canada to opening that border?
We are having ongoing discussions on border issues, on supply chains with the United States all the time. We have an integrated economic relationship and a close people-to-people friendship within our countries that allowed us to move forward on closing the borders in a way that assured essential services and supplies continue to travel. We will continue to look at ways we can move forward to help each other deal with this pandemic. We recognize that it will be time still before we can loosen those border restrictions.
What is the danger, though, Prime Minister?
We recognize that there is a need to protect our citizens, as every country is doing. Most countries around the world move forward on restricting travel, and Canada and the United States are no exception.
Are you, sorry, in French?
Okay.
There are many countries across the world who have limited the comings and goings and controlled their borders and closed their borders to everything but workers or goods that are essential, and that's what we will continue doing.
Americans if we don't open on the timeline that they might want?
The coordination and collaboration between Canada and the United States on this issue and on all issues has been entirely exemplary. The reflection that the President shared was one of how close we are and how the status of the Canada-U.S. relationship is different than the status of relationships that we have with other countries around the world. There was a recognition that we will do things perhaps differently than other countries, but there is still a recognition that we need to continue holding that the measures that we have in place for a good while to come still.
Prime Minister Janet Silver, Global News. With people dying at group homes for disabilities and Premier Ford saying that the situation in long-term care homes should be, quote, a wake-up call for the world, what is your government planning to do to support the country's most vulnerable citizens, not only now, but in the weeks to come?
Well, tonight, I will be speaking with the premiers, and we will be talking directly about how to ensure better protection for our elders in long-term care. It is impossible to imagine the anguish families and indeed our elders are going through in this situation. There is just so much fear, so much uncertainty. We need to do a better job of being there for them. The federal government is looking at ways to support the provinces as they deal with this issue. We're discussing pay top-ups for people who work in those situations because the conditions are getting more and more difficult. There are also more regulations we can talk about bringing in to do a better job of protecting our most vulnerable. I think that's what Canadians expect. We
will speak tonight about the importance of protecting our elders. We recognize this vulnerability that they have in the other home care centers, and we acknowledge that it's a thing that is just atrocious that they're experiencing, this fear, this isolation, this uncertainty. We will and we must be there one for the other. In our conversation tonight with the provinces, we'll go directly to addressing how the federal government can support the provinces on that level, and how we can support workers in those areas, and how we can support our elders directly.
With regards to Quebec's request for military assistance, I'm just wondering, have you received a request from other premiers specifically relating to the military for help for long-term care facilities? And what sort of role do you see the military playing when it comes to long-term care facilities?
We have received 3 requests in total from Quebec, 2 for Canadian Rangers to help out in northern remote areas, both in Nunavik and in Bas-Saint-Laurent. This most recent request around help in long-term care facilities is somewhat different than the kinds of requests that the federal government usually gets around support for provinces, which is much more often around things like floods and forest fires. But we are, of course, working to help. We're working with Quebec to figure out how we can best help in this situation, because this is a situation that is unprecedented at many, many levels. And what we have continued to say is we will figure out how to help. We will be there for each other.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Salima Shivji, CBC News. It's April 16th today, and that was the day that your federal modeling said that there would be between 500 and 700 deaths in Canada and more than 31,000 infected confirmed cases. We're at nearly double the number of deaths. So I'd like to know what went wrong with the modeling, and what does this mean for Canadians?
I think people need to understand that modeling is a framework that allows us to plan for different scenarios in the future. It is not a declaration of what is going to happen, but it is a discussion of what might happen in the coming days, in the coming weeks, and allows us to plan and prepare for it. think one of the things we've seen over the past number of weeks is a far more severe impact on seniors' residences and long-term care centres than we had certainly hoped for, or more than we feared, and therefore we need to take more measures to protect our seniors. That's what I'll be talking with the premiers about tonight. Les modèles nous.
The models are not predicting, are not announcing what will come in, but are preparing us for different scenarios that might happen. And one of the things that we've seen in the last few weeks is that our elderly centers have been hit worse than what we were hoping or expecting, and that's why we will address that issue tonight with the premiers.
Canadian government prepared for some frontline workers, medical workers, to die in the fight against COVID-19, and what would the government possibly be looking at to support family members and dependents left behind?
There have been far too many deaths already in Canada, and that's why we need to continue to do everything we can to slow the spread of this disease and to protect our frontline workers with PPE that we're ordering in, with support for them, for their families as we get through this difficult time. And the most important thing is for Canadians to continue to stay home, to slow the spread of this virus, to ensure that those who go to work every day to keep the rest of us safe and to fight this virus are able to do so in safety for themselves and for their loved ones. We will continue to do everything we can to protect these heroes.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau, Philippe Vincent Foisy de Radio-Canada. Je comprends que vous êtes en négociation avec
I understand that you're negotiating with the province of Quebec. We understood that, but concretely, how many people or medical personnel can you send out? How many doctors or nurses? Just to give a concrete idea of what could be offered to the province of Quebec concretely. Again, as I said, it's the type of request we never had before. So we are developing scenarios and ways to help. We will be there to help. We want to help, and exactly how and what it will look like, we are currently discussing about this. So we have no idea of how 5 or 15 doctors. We're in discussion with Quebec City, with the province of Quebec. We're discussing right now on how we will help. We acknowledge that it is a situation that is serious for the province of Quebec to ask the help from the federal government like this. We will be there, but we will need to develop this solution together. When? In the hours and days coming. We are following those discussions. If there's a request, it's because it's an emergency. So we will do it as quickly as possible to send the necessary help. Thank you, everyone.
And that concludes the Prime Minister. He was, of course,